Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast, made for women who want their healthiest years to be ahead of them, not behind them. Join your host, Courtney Townley, right now as she breaks down the fairy tale health story you have been chasing all of your life into sensible action steps and lasting change. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast. This is your host, Courtney Townley, and as always, I'm super grateful you're here, and I also hope you're doing awesomely well. Now, about a month ago, I aired a podcast. It was a roundtable discussion with about 6 members of the Rumble and Rise community. For those of you who don't know, Rumble and Rise is a membership community that I run that helps women to develop self-leadership in both the health arena and well beyond. And that interview is one of the podcast episodes that I keep hearing about. So a lot of people have reached out to me to tell me how impactful that interview was for them. And we've also had a lot of people join the membership because of that roundtable discussion. So I decided it was probably a good idea to keep interviewing members of the Rumble and Rise community, because I can talk about the community all day long, but what you hear from people's direct experience is something completely different. So I have invited today Marty Wooster to the Grace and Grit podcast. Marty has been a member of the Rumble and Rise community for a while now. And in this interview, she is going to share with you what brought her into the community, where she has reaped value from being in the community. And if you see yourself in Marty and you identify with some of the rumbles that she has personally had, I would encourage you to come join us. And you can check out all of the details of Rumble and Rise by going to graceandgrit.com/ready to rumble. Once again, that is graceandgrit.com/ready to rumble. Now, without further ado, let's dive into this interview. So Marty Wooster, welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy you're here. And I, of course, will just offer you to begin where everyone begins, which is tell listeners a little bit about yourself. Tell them about who you are.
Okay. Well, again, my name is Marty and I am 48. I'm a wife. I'm a mother to 3 boys. Actually, this is kind of interesting. 2 of my boys were diagnosed with autism 4 years apart. And that's been a huge part of just my life learning journey and has really shaped who I am as a person. I'm a teacher. I would definitely say my life was really turned upside down by the pandemic, but I'm really committed to just learning and getting myself back in alignment. And just that keeps life really interesting and really exciting.
Yeah. So I know that everyone listening can identify with life being turned upside down by the pandemic. How specifically did that affect you? Like, in what ways did it affect you?
Oh gosh.
Is it still affecting you maybe?
Yeah. I mean, I lost the job that I knew.
Yeah.
My fitness studio closed. It was like a career change for me, having to teach on Zoom, which I'd never done before. And I was 20 years into my career and not expecting that. Yeah. And I would say that I really lost that awareness and that connection to how I was showing up for myself in terms of, what I was eating and just any sort of routine and plan that I had in my life.
Yeah. And you are not new to the wellness industry in terms of, what I mean by that is you are someone who, like you said, you're a lifelong learner. You've always been engaged with your health process. You know a lot about health. So why did you even join Rumble and Rise?
So about 5 years ago, I lost 60 pounds doing a program that worked at the time, but it was a lot of meal replacements. It wasn't eating real food. And it was very restrictive. Like, you can't eat this, you can't eat that. I was intermittent fasting. And I knew I didn't feel really good. And I knew that I wanted to get back to eating real food. So because I love all things, health and fitness, I found a fantastic program that was macros based, that included foods I wanted to eat, that had my input. And I was really gung-ho about it. And I literally got the program, printed it out. And then when it came to any sort of action, I just froze. Couldn't prepare the food, couldn't do it. And then I was like, I can't do this. What is going on? And then I would tell myself, it's so simple. Just eat this, just exercise. That's all you have to do. And it was a lot of, berating myself, like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? So I knew that there was something going on with me in terms of my thoughts, my emotions that I wasn't addressing, but I had really lost touch with what that was. And I think I literally Googled best podcasts, health podcasts for women in their 40s, and you popped up.
Oh, love hearing that.
Yes. And I just, I saw you had so many fabulous episodes, and I just started listening to the podcast and going on walks around my neighborhood. And then I was like, I want to go even deeper. Like, I want to meet this lady and really talk to her. And so then that's what brought me to Rumble and Rise.
I love it. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think so many women have a similar story. I know I do, where there's a period of our life where we really pursue health as this physical thing. It's purely physical, right? If I just lose the weight, I just fit in the pants, I look like I have toned muscle, it's enough. And yet, a lot of times the measures that we use to accomplish those things either are not sustainable, or we realize that we don't really enjoy them. Like, it's not, we don't feel our most energetic self, or we don't feel like we're the most creative. Like, I was talking to a client the other day who was telling me about all these things that she was kind of doing at one time, which were all pretty restrictive. And she's a pretty intense athlete. And she said, I just realized one day that I felt terrible. All these things that were supposed to make me feel well were making me really ultimately feel unwell.
Exactly.
And so I think our rumble for so many of us is finding that sweet spot between, of course, we all want physical health and we want to look great and we want to feel great, and we don't want to sacrifice our mental and emotional health to do that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So you joined Rumble and Rise. How long have you been a member?
9 months and counting.
And counting. Yes. I love it. And how would you describe your experience?
Oh gosh, it has been just more than I ever, could have possibly imagined. Gosh, where do I even begin? I think that I came into this, knowing that I needed coaching, but that really what I needed to connect to, I already had, that it was like in me. I just had lost that connection to it.
Yeah.
So I think that for me, one of the things that you helped me identify really early on is, I would come to calls, very energetic, full of words, and I would start talking really fast and just blah, 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 blah. And then you would ask me a very simple question like, Marty Wooster, what are your top 3 values? And I wouldn't have an answer. I didn't know what to say. Or when you would ask me like, what are the 3 most important things to you at this age and stage of your health journey?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't have an answer.
Yeah.
So you asked me really good questions. I loved that I would come again, vent. And you would just kind of go, isn't that interesting? Stay wildly curious about that. And I would be like, Courtney, aren't you going to give me an answer? No.
Yeah.
Because, as you reminded me, it's like, a lot, so much already. You just really need to get the heart of why you are not acting and understand how thoughts and emotions lead to action or inaction.
Absolutely.
And that's what's been so powerful for me.
Yeah. And it's like that, a lot of people, I think, come into coaching, and granted, all coaches are different, right? Everybody runs programs differently, but often people hire a coach expecting to have all of their questions answered, right? Like, give me the protocol, tell me the steps, just tell me what to do. Mm-hmm. And this is a very different type of coaching. It's you coming back to your own wisdom. It's you recognizing how much you already know. Mm-hmm. It's tapping into what you really do know about yourself, and also what you don't know about yourself, because you just haven't spent time with yourself on that level. Mm-hmm. And as you start to explore that, you really start to see, oh, isn't that interesting? Like you just said, right? That's so fascinating. I didn't even know that was there. And once you see it, then you can decide what you want to do with it.
Right.
But just covering it up with a lot of to-dos and a lot of instructions and a lot of rules and regulations, that doesn't give you your power back.
Right.
It often makes us feel like we temporarily have our power back. Mm-hmm. But then we ultimately feel like we're in a space like, why can't I just figure this out?
Right.
Okay. So what has been the most impactful thing you think you've learned inside of Rumble and Rise?
Okay. So going back to like really connecting to that wisdom that I had.
Yeah.
One of the things that I learned as, parent of children who have autism, who, are language compromised, is that sometimes we get into these loops with our language, this, where we are just kind of going in circles and we're talking, and maybe venting, but we're not actually stopping ourselves in that cycle and getting us and, propelling ourselves to a place of action. Mm-hmm. And the most powerful thing you've given me are these like very short, kind of concrete things that I can say to myself that get me out of that inner dialogue, loop, mm-hmm. and actually cause me to stop and focus not on the cycling thoughts, but what now am I going to do in terms of action? Like I need to now get to action, like, and you've given me so many tools to do that. I think that like a huge one for me is buffering, mm-hmm. right? I say that to myself several times a day. Like I notice what I'm doing, whether it's I'm on social media or whether I'm looking at a new pair of shoes or, and I can say to myself like, okay, right now you're buffering, like you're uncomfortable, you're tired, you're something, do you like what you're doing right now? And do you like your reasons for it? And then I can pause and decide if that's really what I want to be doing. Yeah. So that just that word buffering, like naming it, your buffering has been so powerful.
Yeah. And for listeners, just to clarify, buffering is really avoiding like discomfort in the moment. So there's something you plan to do for yourself and then you decide that you don't want to lean into that discomfort. So you do something that feels better, even though it's really not in line with your objectives. And we all do it every single day in a lot of different ways. Right. And most of us do it very unconsciously. And the work we do inside of Rumble and Rise is really bringing your attention to it, like really making you hyper aware of what I love what you said earlier of that mental spin out, right? Like spinning out in this sort of jumble of thoughts that are not useful to you, but you don't know how to get out of it. And then also the buffering. Mm-hmm. And I also just want to ask you, because I think this is a really important thing to highlight, that is not comfortable work to do. Like unbusying yourself and unraveling that weave of thoughts in your head that have not been serving you is really uncomfortable at times.
Right. And I think it's created this, this stop and this pause. Yeah. And really, really think, like really make a hard decision about what you're going to do next. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that's been really, really life-shifting for me is when you did your sugar masterclass and you said, ask yourself, does it serve you to think that sugar is addictive? Mm-hmm. And that was mind-blowing for me. Where I really was able to connect to like, if I tell myself that I'm addicted to sugar,
why would you ever stop?
I'm taking my power away in that decision-making process. Yeah. And now I can look at sugar and just, again, stop, think, is sugar on my plan today? Mm-hmm. And again, there's no right. I could decide, yes, it is. I could decide, no, it's not. I'm going to eat it anyway. But at least now I have the tools to stop and pause, make a decision, and then ask myself, do I like my reasons? Mm-hmm. And that is changing my course of action in so many aspects of my life right now.
Yeah. So what has been born out of that? Like, what are the aspects it's changing? Because it goes beyond physical health.
Oh, gosh. I am appreciating slowness, which, I mean, that's a major one for, I'm just appreciating taking time to be slow and methodical. I start every morning now, not getting up at 4 a.m. to go work out. I literally go sit in a chair and look at trees. Yeah. In the suburbs, I just I have these beautiful trees and I just notice if they're twinkling or not. And I listen to music and I'm gifting myself that slowness. I'm chopping vegetables, which somebody who rumbles with cooking, the fact that I'm like, well, my morning needs to involve chopping peppers, chopping cucumbers, showing myself that self-love with preparing this slow lunch is amazing. I needed to, my nervous system, I think with, having to be performing as a teacher and everything that sort of happened in the pandemic, I needed to sort of slow down. Mm-hmm. And create some moments of pause. And I feel like you've given me a lot of tools, to be able to do that effectively. Mm-hmm. I also I love, I now see plans as amazing tools.
Yeah. They're a helpful thing.
They're not hard if you don't look at it that way. So I now see that the plan actually helps me not get into decision fatigue. Mm-hmm. So if I execute my plan, I know what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm not overwhelmed by choices. And there's I'm actually comfortable in that, which that's something that I really rumbled with. I'm like, no, there's tremendous comfort in a plan.
Yeah. And it's also a plan that you created, right? It's not a plan I created for you.
Right.
It's a plan that you have created based on the best of what you know about yourself, based on what you believe health to be at this age and stage of life, based on your own food philosophy, right? You have gone in to get to know those things about yourself. Mm-hmm. And then you create a plan out of self-love and self-respect because you know how precious your time is.
Right.
And, we can, this because we've all done this. We can rationalize that plans are too complicated. They're too hard. It takes too much time. It robs me of my freedom. These are all things that I constantly hear. And yet when you flip the way you're thinking about planning, and it really is coming from a place of self-respect, it does change everything. It completely changes your relationship with planning. And you start realizing how much time it's saving you. Mm-hmm. And how much bandwidth, because we waste a lot of emotional bandwidth on feeling regret and frustration and anger that we know what to do, but we just aren't doing it.
Right.
Yeah. And the other thing is, because you mentioned buffering earlier, it's really hard to know when you're buffering when you don't really know what your values are. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't know how you want to be spending your time, which planning allows you to do, how would you ever really identify that you're buffering? Mm-hmm. So planning actually allows you to really get familiar with all the things you do that are not in alignment with what you said you wanted.
Right.
Yeah. So I love that you bring that up.
Right. And even just like going to the day planner, because I'm very quick to go to, I don't have time. I'm too busy. I've got too many things on my plate.
Sure.
Right. But if I actually go to the day planner and really break it down, and it's slow, but go to that day planner and really break it down, I'm generally faced with you have time. Yeah. You do have time. So again, it's also getting comfort in just that slowness that planning is, but that's going there has been really life-changing for me.
Yeah. I'm curious if you had known coming into Rumble and Rise that you would be really leaning into and starting to appreciate sort of this slowness and these pauses. Mm-hmm. And if you knew that that's a big part of what your experience would have been about, do you think you would have bought into it? Or would that have terrified you from the outset?
That would have terrified me.
Yeah.
I would have just said, no, but the fact is I don't have time.
Yeah.
But I really do. I have a lot of choice. I do have choices with my time.
Yeah.
And I understand that now.
Yeah. And not everyone's work is slowing down. That's like the magic of it, right? But for you, that was such a big lesson that if I'm not paying attention and I'm not spending time with myself to get to know myself, how could I possibly change these things?
Right.
Right. And then there's other people in the world who spend lots of time with themselves. They get to know themselves on a very deep level, but then they do nothing with that knowledge.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah. And I've really I tried to just really expand to even in times when I do feel busy.
Yeah.
Where can I create some slowness? So one of the things I'm doing right now is every day I eat a whole apple and I don't slice it. Like I work my way around the apple core down to the smallest piece I can. That's a very slow, mindful, thing to do. That is very slow. I've recently started weight training and really exploring, lifting heavier weights. And that, oh my gosh, like, I just, and again, I want to say I'm terrible. Like I'm not good at anything in there, but you have to really pay attention to what you're doing.
Yeah.
You have to really be dialed in. I am not working out in front of a mirror. It's just so mind body connected. And then you do this amazing thing and you surprise yourself. And then that connects to like what I'm doing with my food, where I'm like, you just did this slow, strong, beautiful thing. I don't want to blow this. I'm so proud of myself right now. And then I'm finding that is then affecting the same way I am preparing and executing what I eat.
Yeah. I want to highlight what you said to me before we started the call, because it's so perfectly in alignment with this. You said, Courtney, life is strength training, right? Like it is, like you have to be willing to get uncomfortable. You have to like sort of let go of expectations because the progress is not linear. You definitely see that in strength training. You have to, so many things, right? It's just such a great metaphor for life. And the other thing is I really want to lay the context for how big this is for you, because coming into this, you weren't strength training.
No.
Right? When I first met you, you were doing a lot more cardio. You'd been cardio oriented, and your bar classes, which I'm still sure you still do on some level, right? There's those types of classes. So this is really a new arena for you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And, it just something else interesting that's happened that's never happened before is, my husband has been watching me and listening to me as I talk about, my experience with strength training. He's now going to strength training, and I didn't ask him to come. I mean, I would have, I love that he's there, but like, he's definitely seeing something in me and seeing a shift in me that he's like, I like what I'm saying. I want that too. So, yeah.
I think it's such an important point. It's so interesting. I think when we start tapping into things that we know are having a profound effect on us, there's this sometimes a tendency to want to talk about it a lot, right? We see this a lot in the wellness industry, people sharing like, oh, this changed my life. And like just a lot of verbal diarrhea about the thing. Because we want the people around us to understand how impactful it is. But that's not how leadership really works, right? It works by doing your own work. Mm-hmm. And people pick up on the energy change and the shift in you, and that you're navigating the world differently, and they want some of that. Mm-hmm. So then they start asking questions, or they start coming to strength training sessions with you, right? And I just think that it's such a great reminder, like do your work.
Yes.
And people who are inspired by that they'll ask when the time is right for them.
Mm-hmm. Right. And again, and this is again, what you really brought me back to, which I know, which is you need to do the work beyond language, beyond just what you're saying, right? You've got to act, and you've really given me some good tools to do that.
I love it. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast today, you're very sort of health educated. You're a very health conscious person. So what do you think makes Rumble and Rise different than a lot of like wellness and health programs out there that you've tapped into?
I think the thing that I really get a lot from is that we are a group of women that are focused on action. We're not just focused on here is an arena where you can vent and vent and vent and vent and vent. We support each other with the rumbles. I mean, we want to be authentic. We want to be transparent with real life, with those rumbles, but we are focused on action. And I think that I love the group coaching calls because again, there's so much collective wisdom in the group. You get to stay curious about, is somebody going to say something today that really hits home for me? Sometimes it's you, Courtney, but sometimes it's not. And so,
I'm well aware.
I want to just share one thing that happened for me. You did an interview with Marilyn. I've never met Marilyn. Yes. I don't know what Marilyn looks like, right? But Marilyn made this comment. It was so simple, but Marilyn was like, I'm a teacher. You can't tell me that I don't know how to plan.
Yeah.
And she said that, and I instantly connected to that. And I was like, well, I'm a teacher too. Marty, you can't tell yourself that you don't know how to plan. That then propelled me into weeks of planning and writing down everything I know about myself as a teacher, every strength I have as a teacher, connecting my health and wellness and fitness journey back to that. And that was all because of Marilyn,
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. The other thing I really, really appreciate about the group is that, I have days where maybe like, I don't always want to share, I think that like I have moments where like I don't necessarily always want to talk, but I really benefit from listening to what other people are going through, because circumstances may be different, but thoughts and emotions and managing universal thoughts and emotions is the same.
Mm-hmm.
So you may be coaching somebody through a circumstance that's different, but I benefit from, your suggestions or your tools in a similar way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it just stays very, very rich in that way. And again, it's an arena where I can really focus on myself. I've told people in the past that I always loved fitness going in. I'm kind of an introvert with adults, but I love going to fitness classes because I don't have to tell everybody everything about my life. I've worked out with people for years that don't know that I have 2 kids with autism, right? But they know that, oh, that's Marty. She shows up, she says good morning, she cheers me on, she's like, great workout, high five. Right. But that's really positive and uplifting for me. And I feel like in this group too, it's about that I am giving myself permission to focus on myself, to reveal as much as I want to reveal. Right. But it's giving myself that precious time and those tools that are really about me. And it's a tremendous, tremendous gift.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because that really hits home when you say that it's a community. But what I hear in what you're saying is that everyone's focused on their own process. It's not a space where we're all trying to acquire the same goal, or even in a space where we all define health as the same thing. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the beauty of it, right? We show up in this community as who we are, what we're rumbling with, what we're aspiring to. And this community helps support that. It helps to remind us that that's what we're moving towards, whatever that looks like for you. A couple other things I just want to highlight in what you said. It is very proactive, so it's not a reactive community. Like, we have some pretty clear community guidelines in terms of how you're showing up. And the work itself is all about self-leadership, you showing up in a way that really feels true and also feels good to you. It feels honest and true to you. And we also normalize a lot of conversations. I always joke that I'm the facilitator, right? That's all I am. I'm really a facilitator. Yes, I teach and I do all the things, but really I'm facilitating a space where people can come in and be real and talk about where they are stumbling along their journey and help them navigate how to work through that. And there's a level of normalizing that happens in that that's so powerful. Like, I do think the group coaching calls are one of the most powerful aspects because we see ourselves in everybody's rumble. And you said it so beautifully, like, my circumstance might be different, but the emotions, the thoughts, those are things I can identify with. Mm-hmm. And right. I think there's a level of normalizing, especially around women's health and especially around the rumbles of women's health, that conversation isn't loud enough. There's not a lot of spaces and places we can go to sort of voice that. So I love that you bring that up. Yeah, such good stuff. So good. Mm-hmm. So what would you say to a woman who is considering joining, but hasn't? Maybe she's sitting on the fence thinking like, I don't know if this is for me. I've, listened to the podcast for 6 years, because ladies, I know there's a lot of you out there. You email me all the time, like, listen from the beginning. What would you say to them?
I would say join us. It's such a supportive, again, proactive environment. And again, it's rumbling and rising.
Yeah.
You have weeks where you're like, I'm really rising this week, and we celebrate that. And then we have, I have weeks where I'm rumbling, and it gives me a place to be transparent about that. And also, get support and feel, human.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think what I've really, because I am someone that like consumes. I think, get overwhelmed with decisions. I find your tools, your book recommendations, your podcast recommendations, I'm not overwhelmed by the choices.
Mm-hmm.
And I always find the content to be so good. And so if I, again, I get assistance with like, well, what would be a great book to read, or who would be somebody really great to listen to if I've got one Saturday to listen to a podcast, or, so it's helped me not get overwhelmed, with choices.
Love it.
And I also just really love that, we have like our Monday and Friday, check-ins. Like that's very doable for me.
Mm-hmm.
Check-in Monday, check-in Friday. I find that those bookends to be really, really helpful to me across my week. And my life is 100% better and different, like really in 9 months. And I really mean that.
Which I just want to highlight is a testament to the work that you have done, both in and out of the community, right? Because I can give the same tools to 10 different people, and half those people might just consume, like you just said, right? We tend to just take in the information, but not really apply it. And the people who are going to move mountains with those tools are the people who actually put rubber to the road and apply, which I've absolutely seen you do. And it's really been magical to watch. Like I have seen this woman blossom in front of me. I knew you had already blossomed. And then you went into a season of not being sure, right? Of your own amazingness and just trying to sort things out. And then to see all of that come back alive has been really a beautiful thing to witness.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, I ask everybody this, where are you still rumbling?
Oh gosh.
Oh,
well,
how much time do we have? No.
Oh yeah, this could be a whole nother 45-minute episode. Yeah, I definitely rumble with social media, on there more than I would like. I definitely rumble with actually writing with a pen or pencil. I love to eyeball things and talk to myself in my head and say that I've done the work.
Yeah.
That's huge. Right. And just, I definitely will. I will always rumble at times with going slow, but I feel like I have tools now, to really pause. And I accept that life is rumbles, that life is about rumbling. But what you can do with any unexpected thing that may come is you can build your toolbox. Mm-hmm. And you've given me just tremendous tools, and I'm just so grateful, really.
Well, I'm so grateful for you trusting me to help you with tools.
and I'm glad you said that, because I do want to say that. I think for the first time in my health and fitness journey, I really trust myself.
Yeah. That gives me goosebumps, because I feel like that's what it is. That's what it's about. Because at the end of the day, that's what every woman wants.
Right.
They want to be able to trust themselves to make decisions that are healthy for them, that they will follow through with. And the way that we've been conditioned to go about improving our health has really, for so many women, caused them to question their own knowing. I don't know enough, right? I can't possibly guide myself through this. And so I think self-trust at the end of the day is really what it's all about. It's trusting yourself to make the right decisions for yourself and keep the promises that you make to yourself. Because we do that for everyone else.
Yeah. And, last night I was like, well, I'm going to go through a values list again and check in with all the possible values out there and see which ones, I feel if I were to pick my top 3. And I don't, again, I never would have said this before, but like self-trust is a huge value and a huge focus of mine that, again, I've never really owned and never really had before.
Mm-hmm. Because you weren't pausing to consider it, right? Is all really.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything else you want to say in closing? Anything else you want to share?
Just, thank you so much for this conversation, and thank you to all the ladies and Rumble and Rise. And it's so exciting to see new names and new faces and hear new accents from around the world. And so I just, I'm just really grateful to have found you. And I just am so excited to see, where you take us next in our own journey of, self-discovery.
Awesome. I feel the same way. Like, I'm always so excited to see where everyone applies the tools and how they shape their life using the tools, because it is, it's always just so exciting. And it often turns out differently than what people expected. What people come in chasing ends up being something so different in midway or towards the end of their journey inside of Rumble and Rise. And the other thing I just want to express about Rumble and Rise is it's really an incubator of support and education for as long as you need it, right? It's not like this, you come in for 6 weeks, you get what you need, and then you're just expected to fly on your own. Some people might stay for 6 months, some people might stay for 6 years. It's really just dependent on what you're getting from it and how you're applying it. And that's that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that comment that you made, I mean, when I came into this, I literally was focused on, I want to lose 20 pounds. That's it. And it's really interesting, but I'm not focused on the scale. I mean, I weigh myself once a week and I'm like, that's interesting. What I'm really focused on is what's going to happen in my strength training class today? So that has been, again, I didn't know that was going to happen. And that's been really, again, very, very, very positive for me.
It's very freeing, right? Because it's like when you're not chasing a data point and you're just more concerned about how am I showing up today to move in the direction of how I want to feel and of a goal. I'm not saying goals aren't good. Some people still do have weight loss goals. That's perfectly fine. But we don't hyper focus on the weight loss goal. We hyper focus on who we need to be today and organize ourselves today in a way that moves that needle of progress just a titch in that direction. And when you keep doing that day after day, amazing things happen.
Yeah. And the journey is enjoyable. The process is enjoyable and it's not just about the outcome. It's about really growing and learning and enjoying that journey.
Yeah. I feel like I've had that conversation so much lately about how if you don't enjoy the process, it doesn't really matter what product you create because you won't keep it. Nobody's going to stay doing something they hate. And so it's really important that we fall in love with our practices. And then the outcomes are the byproduct of that. Yeah. So good. Thank you so much for making the time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I enjoyed hosting it. And if you are a woman who is inspired by what you heard, you are someone who is looking for an incubator of support like Rumble and Rise, you'll be hard pressed to find anything like it, really. I mean, I've been in the wellness space for over 20 years. And the very reason I created Rumble and Rise was because there was nothing out there like it. So I would love you to join us if it feels like it might be a good fit. The price point is super reasonable. It's $59 a month, and that $59 gives you tremendous value. You get masterclasses, you get access to resources, tons of coaching calls, a private podcast channel, all kinds of goodness. And probably most special of all, you get access to an incredible community of women who are all rumbling together. So once again, you can check out details on this very special community by going to graceandgrit.com/ready to rumble. I hope I will see you on the inside. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Grace and Grit podcast. It is time to mend the fabric of the female health story, and it starts with you taking radical responsibility for your own self-care. You are worth the effort, and with a little grace and grit, anything is possible.